As I've said before, this graph was from 1996.
I got you.
The MAC sedation work was 1991.
At the time that you prepared this insert, you were an assistant professor at Stanford?
That is correct.
And Dr. White had, by that time, left Stanford to take another position.
I think that's correct. I'd have to check his CV, but I believe that's correct.
All right. In 1988, when the paper was done, Audrey Shafer and you did your paper with Dr. White.
Correct.
You were a fellow.
Of Don Stansky's, that is correct.
Can you explain what a fellow is?
A fellow is a person who has come to a institution to learn either a focused clinical skill, such as perhaps neuroanesthesia, cardiac anesthesia, or obstetrical anesthesia, or has come to learn a scientific discipline, which in my case was this thing called clinical pharmacology, which is all the modeling that I've explained to you. Some fellowships include both. There will be a scientific component and a clinical component. My fellowship was a scientific fellowship with Dr. Stansky.
Which was involving pharmacokinetic.
Clinical pharmacology in anesthesia.
And any modeling involved in that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. You would agree with me that the data that was provided for this graph, or any of the graphs that you did, is vitally important.
Absolutely.
If the data is not correct, the graph cannot be correct. The modeling can't be correct.
Yes, fundamentally everything tracks back to data.
It's really garbage in, garbage out is the philosophy.
Data is paramount in science.
If the data is not correct, your modeling is not going to be correct. Is that fair to say?
I'll accept that.
All right. Now, you provided to the prosecution 3 propofol papers that you have prepared, or papers involving propofol, pharmacokinetics of propofol, and I believe that was discussed during your direct testimony.
Yes.
But you've done more papers involving propofol, right?
I've done a lot of papers involving propofol.
All right. Let's go over a few of your other publications.
Yes.
Okay?
May I pull up my CV just to accompany you? I have it here. Go ahead.
And I've got numbers for you so we can do this quickly.
Okay.
All right? Let's go to page 9 of your CV. That's number 29.
Yes.
And this involves the pharmacokinetics of propofol in children.
Yes.
And you were principal of this.
No, Dr. Tataria, who at the time was at the University of Washington, was the principal investigator, gathered these data, and at the request of AstraZeneca, which is, I'm slowing down, I'm sorry. These data were gathered, I believe, at the University of Washington.
Let me object to non-responsive. Were you principal of this study, or were
The objection is sustained. The last answer is stricken, disregarded. I believe it would call for a yes or no. Were you the principal investigator?
Dr. Tataria was the principal investigator. I was not the principal investigator.
Was your involvement in this paper?
I did all of the analysis.
The modeling?
Yes.
Let's turn to page 11, number 15 of your CV. This paper involved...
Number 15?
I believe it's page 11, number 57.
Number 57, thank you, yes.
Have I got that right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a paper that involves propofol and 2 other drugs, is that right?
That is correct.
And you were principal on this?
These data were all gathered by Don Stansky, with the exception of the propofol data, where I was the principal investigator. There are 3 separate drugs. I was the principal investigator for the propofol study, and Don Stansky was the principal investigator for the alfentanil and midazolam data collection.
As part of this study, were you required to obtain, or actually perform studies on human beings to obtain data? Were you asked to do human studies in this particular paper?
Investigators do studies not because they're asked to, but because they want to. I don't understand the nature of the question.
Okay, did you? Did you do human studies in this paper?
Yes.
Okay. And the data that was accumulated was based on human studies? These human studies you did? All right. Let's go to page 10, number 54 of your CV. This is titled Inhalation versus Intravenous Anesthesia.
Yes.
Can you tell us what this paper was about?
This is a paper that was a fictitious debate that was conducted in Cadiz, Spain, in which I played the roles of both Dr. Paul White and Dr. Ted Eager. I attended a meeting where there was to be a debate. But in setting up the meeting, the person I was debating, Dr. Michael Roizen, had prepared the same side of the debate that I had prepared and had to leave before the debate. So I agreed to debate myself. And I gave both sides of this debate. Page 54 here, this paper, is from...
Dr. Shafer, let me ask you a question. You chose the conversation between Dr. Edgar and Dr. White, is that right?
That was all portrayed by me, yes.
Yeah. And how did you do? Pretty good job?
I believe, I'd have to look at it, I think Dr. Eager won the debate with the audience in Cadiz, Spain.
All right. Now, why did you choose Dr. Eager and Dr. White?
Dr. Eager was chosen as the person who is most associated with the use of inhaled, the debate. The debate was, are you better off if you get an inhaled anesthetic, one that you breathe, or are you better off with an intravenous anesthetic, specifically propofol? It's a subject that anesthesiologists like to debate.
So back to my original question, why did you choose Dr. Eager and Dr. White?
Because Dr. Eager is prominently associated with inhaled anesthetics, and Dr. White is prominently associated with the clinical use of propofol infusions.
Now let's go to page 19 of your CV, going down. There are two chapters of books that you wrote or co-wrote.
I believe you mean to say book chapters, I'm just guessing.
Chapters? Yes, chapters. Yes. And I'm going to refer you to Chapter 2, Basic. There's Young's, and both you and Professor Young's wrote these chapters, right?
I don't know what chapter you're talking about.
All right. Well, you didn't number it, so let's go down. I'm going to number it for you. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 on the list.
Okay.
It's page 19.
On mine, that'd be McCleskey and Shafer.
I'm going to go ahead and
That's fine,
block
just
it for
show
you.
me here, yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
This is two chapters you wrote for this book, Basic Pharmacokinetic and Pharmacodynamic Principles. Is that right?
That is correct.
And this is a book where the editor was Paul White.
That's correct.
And the book is titled what?
The book is entitled, I believe it's called Intravenous, yes, Intravenous Anesthesia.
All right. And the book is titled here?
Ambulatory Anesthesia in Medicine.
All right. These particular books, you wrote these chapters at the request of Dr. White?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Do you consider these books to be authoritative texts?
No. These books are intended as instruction to practicing clinicians. I think they're high-quality texts, but authoritative to me really refers to the medical literature. And these books are not scientific studies, but they're high-quality books. I don't mean to say anything. The question is, what do you mean by authoritative? I need an explanation of that term.
Well, would you at least agree that your chapters are authoritative?
Like the book, I think they're good chapters. I consider authoritative to be original scientific research.
Are these books still used today?
I use it, yes.
And in these books, actually, Dr. White is the one who wrote the chapter on propofol.
That's correct, yes.
You have known Dr. White for 20 years then up here, since 1988. So
I would say 30 years. I believe Audrey started, my first wife Audrey started working with Paul in 1982, 1983, something like that.
And you,
nearly 30 years.
And you, in fact, you wrote in 2009, prior to your involvement in this case, you nominated Dr. White for Excellence in Research Award.
Yes, yes, I have that here.
And one of the reasons you did that was that you said pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics of propofol infusions during general anesthesia, this is the 1988,
Yes.
was, for many years, was the definitive manuscript on propofol pharmacokinetics.
That's correct.
So, 2 days ago, when you were asked about Dr. White's statement or alleged statement about oral propofol, drinking propofol, you said, I was disappointed in him.
That's correct.
It's a very dismissive statement, isn't it?
I was very disappointed.
Still
Still disappointed.
You said that in court, obviously, right? You said
Yes.
that, knowing the TVs are here, right? You know that this is internationally.
Fine, it's
I
irrelevant.
think it's argumentative. I think
Let me ask you.
Just a moment, please.
Yeah, okay.
Sustain.
I'll withdraw.
All right, it's withdrawn.
You also said that a first-year medical student would know about first pass, right?
That is correct.
And you said, when Mr. Walgren asked you if there were any studies on human consumption, oral consumption of propofol, you said no, right, at the time. You said that there were none at the time that
Correct.
all right. And when asked why, you said probably because it's so obvious.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about some of the things you also know about this, all right?
Okay.
You know that you read Dr. White's letter to Mr. Flanagan, did you not?
Yes, I did.
You know that it was a letter to Mr. Flanagan, right?
To the people. I don't.
I'm sustaining the objection to the characterization.
Well, did you see that Dr. White had written a letter talking about this case, this particular case?
Objection is to the characterization. This was discovery provided to the people.
It's either a letter or it's not.
Just a moment, please. The objection is overruled. Counsel can pursue it if you wish.
May I pull the letter up for my own reference?
Sure.
Thank you.
If you need the question re-asked, you let us know.
I have the letter here, which I will say follows the same format of my letter to Mr. Walgren. I thought that was customary.
Then you know that what Dr. White says in his letter, that it is speculated that Mr. Jackson added a portion of the lidocaine to one of his drink bottles.
Let me read you. May I read you exactly what it says?
Well, why don't you see if that is a correct statement?
Is that
You can
correct
answer
or
yes or
not?
no.
Okay, give me the statement again.
It is speculated that Mr. Jackson added a portion of the lidocaine propofol mixture to one of the fruit drink bottles found at bedside. You recall that?
Let me find it. That's one of several statements. That follows the statements.
A non-responsive, he is.
The objection sustained, the answer stricken. Please disregard.
That statement occurred.
Just wait a minute, please. Is that a statement in the one statement in the letter?
I'm trying to find that exact statement. Self-administration. That is at the end of a long sentence, and it's actually in the whole paragraph. In the end of that sentence, it says, "It is speculated
That's
that
Dr.
Mr. Jackson."
objection and
Just a moment,
non-responsive.
please. The objection sustained, the answer stricken. You can just answer yes or no
Yes,
to the
yes,
question.
yes.
Thank you.
Your Honor,
You know this.
what's being cited is not a complete sentence, so he asked him, I think he's just trying to clarify the
I'm
answer.
pretty sure that redirect is for those kind of.
The objection, it remains overruled. Ask your next question, please.
You know the circumstances of that letter, don't you?